Hi, welcome to Write More Light. My name is Sarah. I'm with the Midwest Writing Center, and this is a web series in which once a week I give an itty bitty lesson on something literary, and once a week I interview somebody doing something awesome in the arts. Today, you are in magnificent luck. I'm going to be talking to two people about a topic near and dear to my heart. Following that, I will give some really brief updates on the Midwest Writing Center and leave you with a prompt to do on your own. Today we have two incredible, incredible poets talking about disability and writing. Tate Lewis-Carroll is a crypt poet, the author of Blind to the Prairie, Guests of Sunlight, and What's Left. They hold the Sutherland Fellowship in Poetry at Illinois State University, where they teach creative writing and serve as managing editorial assistant for Spoon River Poetry Review. They currently maintain a rigorous daily writing project with Royal Quiet Deluxe and 2,500 feet of receipt paper rolls, which is very cool. And I hope you'll show us. And then we also are here with Liv Mammone, an editor and poet from Long Island. Her poetry has appeared with Button, the Poetry Foundation, Academy of American Poets, Medical Journal of Australia, and a lot of other places. Um, in 2017, she competed for Union Square Slam and was a finalist in the Capturing Fire National Poetry Slam. A Brooklyn Poets Fellow and Zooglossa Fellow. She's currently an editor at Game Over Books, which is a kick-ass press. Spoon River's also badass, but we've worked with them at the Writing Center, so presumably people know. In in 2022, hers was one of the top 10 most read poems at Split This Rock's poetry database, The Quarry. Her first collection, Fire in the Waiting Room, is available from Game Over Books. It is, I'm so, so happy to have these two people in the room. I'm so happy to introduce these two. Um, they are, uh, these are some of my favorite books. These are some of my favorite people. This is just like the greatest fortune for me to I don't know, to be able to do this just as myself, let alone presenting it to the world. So thank you both so much for for doing the work, but for hanging out with me together at the same time. Very cool. I'm gonna open with some writing stuff before we get into, I guess, the meat and potatoes, if you will. And I'd love to hear how each of you came to writing in the first place.
Kate, I want to hear yours first. It's mine's boring, so I want to hear yours first.
Okay, how I came to writing. Um, I came to writing by just about flunking out of nursing school. I started as a nursing major at Illinois Wesleyan in town, and then did poorly, moved to Florida, and then I came back because that was like the only place that would take me. And I was like, okay, I'll just be um an English major until I can figure out how to make, a bunch of money and be successful. And then I was enrolled in my first poetry class with Dr. Joanne Diaz, who is amazing. And my father was diagnosed with cancer and then died 6 months later, and which couldn't have come at a better time for me. But really, like that, like opened me up to accept poetry as this um, urgent and living practice in order to like get myself through that, but also explore him and myself. And yeah, so then I haven't stopped writing.
I want to say really quick. Of course, I laughed when you said it was good timing. Um, but there's something really like grief comes for all of us. Um, and a lot of the time when people try to make art about it, it's not great. But there's something throughout what's left that yeah is really just I was saying yeah to myself, but I'm glad you held it up. Um, that is really real with the grief. Like it's not sweet or trite. It's just real. And I know for folks who haven't read the book, like I'm not, it's complicated, But the thing for me is that grief is complicated. So that's what's really particularly refreshing, like other than it being good. Liv, you go ahead.
I really appreciate, Tate, that you can say that it couldn't have come at a better time, because I don't think we, that doesn't mean that it wasn't hard and it didn't suck, but it's like that, there is something about like the things that happen in our lives that are also the things that happen in our work. And sometimes they do happen at good times where you're just like, oh, good, at least I have something to do with this. Like, at least I can make a thing out of this, even though it's terrible. So I'm one of those people who just kind of rolled out of the womb with a pen in her hand. Like, there's never been a time in my life when this isn't what I wanted to do. I really, since I was little, I really, really, really wanted to be a writer. I initially wanted to be a novelist. I will one day write a novel, but that will require me having to like figure out a plot. And I'm just not that poetry has kind of hobbled me in that regard, where I get very like into the themes and into the character development, and then somebody goes, "What happens?" And I'm like, "Meh, yeah, that's it. You lost me." So I've been writing, even before I could actually physically write with my disability. I've been telling stories and making up stories, my whole life, and so that's kind of always what I wanted to do. And I was really lucky to know that, to really like zero in on that early and have a goal and be like, this is what's going to happen, and be supported in that. My family was very, very supportive, and has done everything they could to get me to, have the resources that I wanted to have to be a professional writer. So I that was my hobby, all through my childhood. And then I got to college and I, did the English degree. And then I immediately went and got an MFA. Shout out to Queens College. I got my MFA right out of undergrad, which maybe I wouldn't, if I had my life to live again, I probably wouldn't have done that. I probably would have taken a year off to kind of write on my own and study on my own and like figure out who I was and then go get the MFA. I think that I sort of was too young to really utilize like what I was learning, and I'd like a do-over on my MFA. I think I was too young to really like be able to digest what I was hearing in my MFA, and was surrounded by a lot of real geniuses and was just not smart enough in my own voice to be able to make use of what they were telling me. So if I had my life to live again, I would maybe wait. And then after I did my MFA, my symptoms really changed of my disability, and I got really, really ill. And so I was kind of bedridden for 6 months out of the year for a lot of years, and I'm coming out of that now. And so that's sort of that's the new phase that I'm at in my life right now. Like in the middle of that, I published the book. I tried to build a career basically from my bed. And so now I'm in a different place and I can physically do a lot more stuff. And now it's about kind of relearning my body and relearning its capabilities, and still allowing myself to have limits and work my writing practice around those limits, even though I can do a ton more than I used to be able to do. So now, my instinct is kind of like, yeah, let me run myself into the ground. And my body is not allowing me to do that. So now it's a question of like balancing my writing life against what I'm capable of doing. And it's especially hard now that I have a book out, because all I want to do is promotion. And it's so hard. So I'm in the middle of like promoting this book, trying to write the next thing that's happening, and also trying to like live my life on basically 4 hours of energy every day. So it's fun. It's an adventure.
I want to give a quick shout out to poet Elliot Sky Case for calling themselves the poet laureate of my bed. Um,
Love that. Oh man, I
yeah.
gotta put that in my bio. That's so smart.
I wrote down build a career from my bed and I was like, damn, that's beautiful. And then I thought of Elliot Sky Case,
That's
poet
amazing.
laureate of my bed. So good. Um, I did not know I did not know a lot of that, Liv. That's very exciting for me. Not for you, actually.
It
Uh,
is exciting for me in a way,
yeah.
but yeah, it's different now. It's changed. Not a lot of people get to heal.
Right.
Get to deal with that kind of chronic pain, and then get to have a thing that like lets them come out of it in a big way. A lot of people with chronic pain, it's like, this is your life now
Yep.
and enjoy. So I'm in a real space of gratitude because I got a real second chance at my life. Shout out to Dr. Beckley at Columbia for giving me my
Oh,
life back. Shout out Dr. Beckley. I love him. He's the best. But yeah, I feel really fortunate and I feel really lucky to be able to not be in my bed for 6 months out of the year anymore. It's great.
no, that's really big. Um, and a good segue into my segue question. When were you first aware of your body in your writing?
Oh boy.
One of those questions I should have warned you about.
That, I feel like I'm just starting to do it. Is that a crazy thing to say? Because I really got aware of disability poetics when I was in graduate school. Nicole Cooley, who was the head of my graduate program, gave me the anthology Beauty is a Verb, which is a disability poetics anthology. And yeah, shout out to Beauty is a Verb. And like you gotta know by that age. I was like 20, and you gotta know, like, yes, obviously there are other people with disabilities writing poems. Like, obviously, like, the inchoate
But that
age.
doesn't mean that you are like you can know a thing and not know a thing.
Right, exactly. So I really knew, like, I obviously was like, yeah, sure. And then when you are sitting holding like a 600-page anthology of people doing that, it just changed my whole life. And it really, it made me start writing about my disability because I wasn't doing that beforehand because I'm visibly disabled and I was kind of like, well, I get up on stage and I'm talking to a microphone. They can see it. Like, they know. I don't need to put it in the poems too. And so and then I got to grad school and everything I was writing was kind of like dead. And it wasn't really alive. And then when I started learning about disability poetics, that's when everything really came to life. And that's what Fire in the Waiting Room came out of. So Fire in the Waiting Room is a book about being disabled, but I have the experience as a disabled person of really, really trying to separate my intellect from my body. Like, I consider myself to be a brain in a jar. I'm just like, no, this is fine. Everything is great here. Everything below the neck is just chaos. And so now that Fire in the Waiting Room is out, I've started thinking about my body as a part of the writing process. It's like, no, honey, this is the vehicle through which you make the thing. You have to listen to the vehicle through which you make the thing, or you can't write the poems. Like, what are you doing? So I started realizing, like, for example, I don't breathe when I write. I have a real difficulty, like, taking breaths as I'm writing. And I was like, that's a thing that maybe you should look into. I've stopped free writing because it's totally physically uncomfortable for me. And we all got writing workshop brain rot, and free writing is like the thing that everybody does. And I got to a point where I was just like, this actually hurts me, and I don't like doing this, and I will not be doing this anymore. So it's funny because the book is so aware of the body. All of the poems in the book are about the body. And then after I published the book, I was like, you're not paying attention to the thing that your book is about at all. So I happen to I am actually just becoming aware of my body in the writing after using it as a topic for 100 pages. Then I was like,
No, that's so, I mean, my writing has so often been aware of things I'm not, which is really annoying. Shoot, you said something. No, sorry.
it'll come back to you. I say a lot of stuff.
I think it was just I want to follow up after Tate answers about the body awareness.
That was lovely, Liv. Thanks for, getting into that. Um, I I too I liked how you talked about like the ableism of your workshop or like standard workshop practices, because that's something that I've been thinking a lot about now too, especially teaching introduction to creative writing. How to be conscious of that while still like like using what I've been taught in a way that is maybe hopefully helpful, but like you said earlier about relearning, And there's, for me too, there's a lot of relearning happening at this moment. Um, but I think I've also more recently become aware of my body and my writing as a way to inform my writing or as a way to like coexist with my practice. Um, because as I said, what's left is about like my dad and that sort of grief. And when that was over, when I finished the book, um, what emerged most profoundly for me was not to maintain a relationship with my remembered father, but instead with poetry. But I
Mm.
didn't know, since I used my dad as like my vehicle into this new way of new awareness, or once that was finished, I didn't know how to relate my writing to anything not my, because for so long it was just cramming my dad into this image, or there's something pretty, let's put my dad there. So it's so after that, actually, I said earlier that I'm kind of a compulsive writer, and I just kind of constantly write notebooks all the time, and I've been kind of going through them recently. And what I noticed I wrote so much about was just complaining about aches and pains and different stuff going on. But that was always something that I think you spoke to about too, Liv. It's like, okay, well, separate that. That's not what my writing's about. My writing's important or whatever. Um, and so I've done this for a year now. I've maintained a near daily writing on a typewriter with rolls of receipt paper, where my I'm trying to focus on living in a body and like living through the writing, like a chronic writing practice, I call it, in a chronic body.
I love that, Tate. Oh my God, I love that idea for a practice. There really is something about when your first book comes out where you're just like, okay, what now?
Yeah.
Like, okay, now I have to do something totally different. And now what happens? My book is the culmination of 10 years worth of work. It sounds like your first book didn't take that long. But yeah, there really is something about that first manuscript coming out. You're just like, all right, now I got to change my life, apparently.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, how do you change, or what do you change into? And for me, it's been slowing down. Uh, ch yeah, changing into being here as opposed to being so goal oriented, but also so task oriented and capitalistic oriented.
It's so funny that you said that. I actually have this joke that one of my future books is going to be called Diary of a Recovering Capitalist, because I think there is something so internalized ableism about capitalism. And I think, I don't know if this is true for everybody with a disability, but I know for me, my whole life is about like, yeah, that thing you think you got to do, that's capitalism. That thing that you think you got to be, that's capitalism. And you don't actually have to do any of those things or any of that stuff. And yeah, I let me know when you figure out the not being goal oriented and task oriented part of the equation, because I still haven't gotten there yet. I like a task. I wake up every day and I'm like, what are we gonna do? And it's really hard when your body is kind of outstripping your ambition. Like when your body is just kind of like, yeah, no, I'm not going to allow you to be this person that you thought you were going to be. um so yeah, for me, I can definitely relate to the being forced to slow down. Like you have to learn it because you're being forced into it, and you have to kind of learn how to live with it. But yeah, the capitalism part is yeah, oh for sure. And then we became poets. We got into the most anti-capitalist career space ever. And I'm still like, no, I want to publish 8 books. Like I want to do this and this and this and this. And it's like, you don't have to do any of that. Who said you had to do any of that? So that makes a lot of sense to me.
I think
Yeah.
hold on. I think there's a difference between like the productivity thing
Mm,
and and the accomplishment
Mm,
of making
mm.
an art piece.
mm.
Can you say more, a little bit more about that, Sarah? I would love for you to expound.
Maybe we'll find out. I think the productivity, the capitalism, the pressure of capitalism to be productive is the thing telling us you have to spend 3 hours a day on this project, and the project has to be complete in 6 months, and the project has to then get published, have a large reception, be successful, and make you rich. I think that's all capitalist productivity pressure. But me wanting to have made an art piece, and I think that a book is a single art piece that is made up of smaller art pieces, um, is totally different and doesn't have to exist within that framework. I'm trying because I've got this broken thing in my head too, where I'm like really interested in status. Um, and so I'm actively because I so love like zine culture and DIY projects, and I have a couple of really badass presses here locally that are um that will like work on trade and are like really collage based. And so that's been really helpful for me to be like, oh, these are my ideals and values. How do I push that back into my brain? If the point is art, it doesn't have to be about the productivity, it's about the making. Hey, I was able to talk about it. Anyway, you can make as many books as come, however they come. I'm gonna
I love that for you, Sarah. So
don't put art in that box.
Yeah, I love that too. And that's so much what I'm thinking about with the tapes because it's so strange and hard to read and hard to do anything with because I guess I think of it as as if I'm writing poetry instead of poems, kind of just
mm,
all one thing that I'm doing. Um, and okay, I also wanted to say that to live capitalism stinks. It's the worst. But one of the ways that it I think affects us as poets with bodies is that it makes illness into a temporary stasis. You're not well, so you don't go to work, and then you get better, so you can go back to work, which then makes care into a temporary um, uh, thing, I guess, too. You only have to care for yourself when you're not well. And it sounds like what you're speaking to, what I'm trying to do as well is like, how do I care for my body with my writing and also care for my writing like with my body over a lifetime?
how do I care for my body with my right? That's so smart. I have to think about. I'm going to be thinking about that for a while. What I'm also thinking about from that, Tate, something that I'm also learning right now is like I need constant care,
Mm.
and that is not bad. Like so do we all, but
Mhm.
we've been tricked into thinking that we don't because of over individualized capitalist culture. So I have, you know, a network of care around me, and the assumption was always that like eventually I would stop needing this network of care and I would move on to my independent life and I would, you know, be well. And that is not what is occurring. And I'm dealing with a lot of like, okay, well, the thing that you were told you had to do in your entire life, which is be independent, is not what you're doing. So how are you supposed to like live with yourself? How, and I mean that in like a good way. I mean that in like a, okay, how are you supposed to like be okay with yourself and wake up in the morning and like love yourself and love the shape of your life if it's not the shape of the life that you were told that you had to have, or that if you worked hard enough, or if you were you know, medicalized enough, you would have this certain life. And so the idea of care, you know, we're taught that care is temporary. I think that everybody with a body could benefit from learning that care is not temporary, that we all need care all the time, and that should be building different networks of care, and that capitalism destroys the way that we think about care. So that's really smart, Tate, is all I really wanted to say. That's really something that I'm thinking about often as I'm, getting older, and I'm just like, this isn't where I thought my life was gonna be. And that usually means in terms of care. It doesn't mean in terms of my writing. It means in terms of like I thought I was going to be at a different place in terms of my body and in terms of its capabilities, and it's just getting worse. And so yeah, I think it really would benefit everybody in the whole world to be like, hey, you deserve to be cared about all the time, not just when you're sick, not just when you're not at work.
I love that.
I want to address something, Liv, you said directly, but I think you've both really touched on a lot. And it's something I think about a lot too. I think I think probably all people experience this whether or not they think about it, which is a head in a jar. Um, I think about it a lot because I try really hard to, like, honestly, probably in a woo-woo way, because I focus on it so hard to remember that, like, these are not separate things. Because I think we tend as a society to work on one and not the other. And then when say we open up to the other one, we're like, oh, I have to take care of my body for my brain, or I have to take care of my brain for my body, and it's not a single unit. And I think that that certainly occurs to folks whose so I didn't want to say I don't want to say to disabled bodies first, or to people with disabilities first. Um, but I think people who have any sort of awareness of their body come to them, happen to them, um, is when that will first occur to them.
Mhm.
That's
Um,
definitely been a huge part of like me getting into alt like you said woo woo. I also am a woo woo bitch. Getting into kind of alternative spirituality and earth-based spirituality has been a lesson for me in how to observe more of the connectivity of things and the connectivity of mind and body, the connectivity of things that we think of as living versus things that we think of as non-living. Like it's that's been something that I've the reason I went to spirituality was to kind of heal that body mind divide that exists in Western medicine and Western culture. So I hear what you're saying, Sarah.
do you, I guess it's not a question, it's just something I think about a lot. Um, and I don't think it is, I mean, no one is able-bodied forever, obviously. But I do think it's something that can occur to you if something happens to your head or to your brain or your body. See, even that's interesting, right? I said head as if that's not a body part, right? When I think brain, I think like organ, internal, emotional, whatever. Um, but head is a body part, right? I don't know. Yeah, do y'all have thoughts on that? Liv, you answered that already.
It's very like pork and pig or beef and I don't, what's the other?
Chicken and chicken.
Chicken and chicken, beef and
Yeah.
cow. Yeah, it's like, yeah, that is actually the same thing.
Yeah.
Oh, mine was a joke. I'm sorry. Yeah, we have lots of words for the meat that's separate from the animal. That's a really good connection there. That's so fun.
Yeah, and just the way that, like you said, one has to be maintained in order to be of service for the other.
Whichever one you were told
Yeah,
was the important one.
whichever one is the important one. Yeah, which in my case was your brain is important. Your body is not. Your body is your vehicle. You have to take care of your body so that it can be your vehicle for your brain.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that that idea of like the writer or the author is kind of like a mind hovering over the page, kind of, separate
Oh,
from the body.
especially the writer in isolation, which we love to romanticize.
Mm.
Right. That's the archetype, but that is so rarely. I mean, is it ever the case?
That's not healthy for body or mind
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
or
And
person.
yet that image I feel like is maintained or still perpetuated as like the goal, you know?
You got to do it on your own or it doesn't count. You have to do it, you have to do your own thing or it doesn't actually matter that you did anything. And that's really something that that's why I got into poetry, I think. I think that was why poetry kind of presented itself as the ideal medium for me, because it was like
You thought you could do it alone?
I thought I could just do it alone. I was a lonely child, and it was just like a book is a thing that you can have while you're alone, and it's also a thing that you can make while you're alone. You don't need other people to help you make a book, which you actually way do. You look at how long my acknowledgments page is my in my book is. If you don't believe me, it's like you need. I personally really need other writers in a way that I'm only learning now is like not a detriment. Like I need to be in a workshop or no writing gets done.
I
I wish I was a person like Tate who had a really robust daily writing practice. No, I'm too disabled. It doesn't happen. I Everything is more important than my writing. Actually, I'm my in my other life I'm an editor, and my editing for my clients is so much more important than my writing. And my writing, it's the last thing that happens every day.
well, and I think when you edit or when you're like a good editor, you're thinking so much more deeply about language. Like, of course, that's going to be helpful to your own writing.
It
Absolutely.
I'm
definitely
getting so excited.
it feeds off of each process feeds off of the other. But I remember when I first started editing professionally, and my mentor at the time said, "Don't do it, you'll never write." And I was like, "That's not true." And it turned out that she was absolutely 1,000% right, because I am an acts of service person. And so if you put in front of me a deadline for an edit and a deadline for my own writing for a publication, that's gonna lapse while I finish this manuscript. I'm like, other people's work is so much more important to me than my own.
I feel like for me, that's more about accountability. Like someone else is relying on me, which is can go your way. But when you said it, I was like, oh no, that's because someone will notice if I miss this deadline.
Yeah, that's also true. That's why I also can't do fake deadlines. Like sometimes my clients will give me deadlines that like aren't real. Like they don't actually like matter in any real way. They'll just say like, okay, we're gonna do it by like this. And if I know it's fake, I'm not gonna do like I need to actually have there be stakes or I'm not doing it. So, but also it has to do with I feel so much grace and gratitude that somebody like shows me the soft white underbelly of that is their manuscript, right? Like, very often I work freelance, so very often it's somebody who's never written a long form thing before, or they've had it in a desk in their drawer for 1,000 years, and they're finally feeling ready to show it to somebody. And I feel so gifted with somebody coming to me and being like, hey, can you look at this thing that like nobody's ever looked at? Here are my thoughts.
Mm.
Here are my feelings. Here is my father's death, or like whatever the topic of the manuscript is. I feel so like, oh my God, like that's why would you have me be the one to do that? And so like I feel very blessed to be able to be a part of that process. And so that is so much more important to me than like whatever I might be doing, which is not, I'm not saying this is good. This is actually very bad. I'm like, I need to work on this, and I need to tell myself that my work is equally as important as the work of my community that people are bringing to me. But I need to be in a workshop, or nothing is happening. Somebody needs to crack the whip. I actually also have to be paying a certain amount for the workshop. If the workshop is too cheap, I will not write in it, because I only paid however much for it. If I pay a couple $100, it's like, okay, well now you got to make poems because you paid a couple $100, which is so capitalist and like so ridiculous. But I need community. I need
It's an investment thing.
It's an investment thing. I invested in this, and now I'm going to make make sure that I make the thing. But it also has to do with community. I need other people holding me accountable. I need other writers that I kind of want to impress a little bit. That I kind of I kind of want the draft to be a little bit impressive. So I have to bring the draft in that's like a little bit okay. This is not a healthy way to relate to writing, listeners. I'm telling you what not to do. This is really unhealthy.
Yeah. And I mean, that's just the way it is, though, too. Like that anxiety of production, too, really gets me going. Like, I need to have this to someone. This is the deadline, you know. Um, Shoot, what was I gonna say? I don't know, but a after my undergrad, I took 5 years off before starting my master's. Just touching back to what you were saying earlier
Yeah.
about you had waited, and in that time, I worked in editing and like developmental editing and stuff, and it's so amazing that like what you're speaking to. I love that process of w working with someone on their piece as opposed to my own too.
I'm so grateful to get to. Yeah, I agree, Tate. I wish that I had taken 5 years off between undergrad and grad school. I think I would have come into grad school with a much more like cohesive, like I would have known who I was better, both personally and professionally. But yeah, there, editing for me is a form of community care, because very often I am working with clients who don't have access to like big publishing, like maybe they can't afford an editor. Maybe I'm working with them on a steep discount. Maybe like I really like to work with marginalized folks who may not have the opportunity to work with an editor otherwise. So I will do anything to make that process more available to them. And so, because I think of it as community care, and because I am such an acts of service person, I don't think of my own writing as community care. So I'm just like, yeah, well, whatever. And but of course it is. So
Yeah, of course it is, right? But that's so hard to like say that I am as worthy as someone else is of my own time or my own ability, right? But like something I've been thinking about lately is um I feel like I have denied myself spaces within di different groups throughout my life because I'm not enough or
mm,
I'm not as or something. And almost as like in my head, I'm saying it's a, you know, respectful, I'm leaving this space for people who maybe more need it or better fit it. But I've been thinking lately about that refusal to accept myself or see myself in those same lights also like rejects others in similar positions, and that self-advocacy sometimes is as advocating for other people as any other act of service to them.
Well, it's ableist too. Now, I don't know when disability occurred to you in your life, like when you became aware or like acknowledged disability for yourself, Tate. But that's something I know I do all the time. Um, which is like I had to talk myself into n not trying to see this as a panel that I'm moderating, but as a conversation I can be a part of because um I couldn't possibly be allowed to partake in this conversation, right? Um, which is nonsense. But I think, okay, I think that this internalized ableism transfers over into how we view our work, right? Because whether or not you mean to, um, and I'm saying you, I'm not really necessarily talking to the two of you specifically, but you you deny the need for help, or you try to make yourself smaller, or you feel like an inconvenience or a burden. Why wouldn't that transfer over into the way that we view our work?
Mm, mm, yeah.
It's I can give that care to the community, but I'm taking up too much space if I bring my own.
It just limits the space for everyone.
it does. Yeah. Something that I had to tell myself with regards to like specifically with regards to resources, like I was looking for state aid for my disability, and I was just like, "Oh, I hate this. Like I have so much already, and I'm so privileged, and I don't really need this, and like there are other people who need this more." And then what I finally realized was like just because there are people who need it more, me not taking it doesn't guarantee that it will go to the people who need it more than I do, because
Mm,
the state is invested in making sure that the people who need it more than I do don't get the resources they need. So me saying like I'm not going to do it, that's not going to guarantee that it's actually going to go to somebody who needs
And
it.
it could limit what's available in the future,
Yeah.
right? The more people who need a thing,
mm.
Speaking at this moment in financial terms, there's a lot of, especially state programs, right? That are like, here's the allotment of money, and if you use less, you get less next time.
That's mine. That's all of my resources. If you don't use it, it just goes back into the ether, and then we reallocate for you, and we give you less because you didn't use what we
And
gave you.
especially with disability in mind, like it's hard to get resources.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
and I think being able to access them can, it's a very messed up world. I'm not saying it will, but can help move toward more accessibility for them.
Mhm.
I mean, I know I'm blowing the minds of my caseworkers for my state aid. Like I say things to them and they're just like, "What do you mean?" Like they've never encountered the kind of questions that I have. They've never encountered the kind of things I want to do. And I say to them like, "Hey, if I wanted to do this thing, how would I find the resources to do that?" And they're just like, "What? Like what do you mean?" So I know that even in their lives, like I'm paving the way for, hey, you've never encountered somebody who wanted to do this before ever? Okay, well, let's work on that maybe.
Yeah. And the way it's so seemingly intentionally difficult to, I mean, even the websites are trash.
The
Oh,
paperwork and
They've
the
got to
whole
be inaccessible for normies, right? Like these websites.
they have to be. I mean, if you're like an old person who doesn't live on the computer in the way that our generation does, my mom like has to do all that. My brother is also disabled, very severely disabled, and she does all the work for him for his services. And I'm like, it, I have to explain to her, like, no, it's not you. It's just not working. Like, it's not you. You're not doing anything wrong. The thing just doesn't work because no one cares that the thing doesn't work. So, just watching her have to go through the process, watching, like, I have a lot of, we going back to the brain and body divide. I've been saying for a long time, like, oh, I'm physically disabled. And my disability is actually caused by damage in the brain. So as I'm getting older, I'm like, no, literally, you don't have to like do that. You don't have to say like, oh, but my brain is fine. Like you don't have to do that. But then I think about my other colleagues and friends who are neurodivergent, and I look at what I have to do to get services, and I'm like, man, if I had autism or I can barely do this and I have all of my mental resources available to me. I can barely get this done because it's so confusing and annoying and like you just don't want to. How is anybody actually supposed to make use of these services whose brain operates differently than the way these freaking forms are set up? My I can't do it. My mom can barely do it. Like it's so intentionally. And I say this to all of my friends who are trying to get on disability. I say to them, this is supposed to be terrible. They want it to be terrible so that you will eventually give up and they don't have to give you the money. That's how this works. They want it to it's intentionally awful. So and that doesn't always help because that doesn't always mean that they get seen and clock and legibly seen as disabled by the non-disabled people who are handing out the money. But like, just knowing that it's not you,
yeah.
if you're at the beginning of this process, it is not you that is failing. You're being set up to fail if you're standing at the beginning of a process like this.
Yeah, exactly. You definitely, or I have internalized that failure as a deficit of my own, which makes you think about spoon theory, and yet these systems that say they're here to help people, in fact, require so many more spoons to be paid in order to not be held, or
Yeah.
to make appointments with doctors who, you're fine. I'll see you next 6 months or whatever.
Something that is wild to me, and this seems so obvious, but it's something I relearn every day. Did you guys know that everything takes energy? Like every single little thing takes energy or takes spoons. If you're using the spoon
So
theory as your rubric,
I
that
want to
was like
quick explain spoon theory.
so. Yeah, okay, yeah, that's a good idea. So spoon theory for people who are not familiar with it, I'm
I'll
gonna
I'll link to, but you don't look sick.
yes, because I am
But
actually gonna forget the name of the activist who came up with this. Does anyone
well, her
know?
website is but you don't look sick.
Okay, So I apologize to the activist who actually invented this concept for forgetting your name. I use it so frequently that it's just a part of my life.
Hmm.
Spoon theory is the idea that every task takes up a certain amount of spoons, and you only have a certain number of spoons for every day for all of your tasks.
Hmm.
And people who are um, dealing with various disabilities, neurodivergences, chronic illnesses, things that don't take as much spoons for other people take more spoons for your body and for your mind. So it's an idea, it's like a little bit like when you are playing a video game and your character has that little life bar on the side of the screen, and everything that they do takes a little bit of energy from the life bar. Did you know everything takes energy from the life bar? I didn't know that. I only thought that hard things take the energy out of the life bar. No, everything, eating,
Some
showering,
days,
everything takes
some days
energy.
making coffee is just making coffee, and some days it's finding a filter and filling the tank and throwing out the old grounds and adding the grounds and making sure you count the spoonfuls and putting the right amount of water into the tank. And then don't forget to put the lid back on the thing so that the percolator hits the bump. And oh, make sure the heating element doesn't have any water on it because you just poured water in. And then pressing the button and then remembering to come back because you haven't had coffee yet, so how are you going to remember to come back when? But some days it's just making coffee. Some days
Yeah.
every step counts.
For me, that's I've stopped showering every day. That's been like my big, like, since I hit my mid 30s. That would be a thing that would be like unconscionable for me in my 20s. I'd be like, "What do you mean?" And I can't. I'm like, some days you take a shower and you're fine. Other days you take a shower and the day is blown. That's it. That's all I'm doing. I'm taking a shower and I'm taking a nap. That's it. Done. So like I've really had to think about how much energy, and even things that you want to do take energy, which is crazy to me. Like even things that are pleasurable to you and reinvigorate you in other ways are taking your energy away from you. I'm losing energy doing hobbies, and I have to weigh that against, okay, but you got to do the other thing. So, or do you want to go and do that because you have to do the other thing? It's so difficult because I used to think that only things that were challenging took energy. And now I'm like, oh no, everything, even the things that are not particularly difficult, you finish them and you're just like, damn, oh my God, you got to send a couple of emails. If I got to send more than 2 emails in a day,
Yeah.
that's the whole day. That's it. So,
Yeah, exactly. And then so when those systems that are set up in place in order to alleviate those things are in fact taking up more spoons, I mean like how I that's it.
and this goes back to the original question of the top of the conversation is like, I didn't know that writing took up energy. I was like, this is the thing that's supposed to be the thing I want to do more than anything. This is the thing I started doing because it was easy, and now it's just as hard as everything else is to
I
do.
get so mad when people talk about like, do the stuff that's going to fill your cup. And I'm like, that's not better actually.
It's not better. It's
Yeah.
not
Or
better. If I take a
like
shower, it's the whole day.
like self-care as like a bubble bath or whatever. And I'm like, self-care is eating.
Yeah. Seriously.
Self care is eating. Self care is remembering how many days it's been since I took a shower. Like, I have a dog now. I talked about him a little bit off mic. He takes so much energy from me physically. I adore him, and he is like my heart on the outside, and I love that's what I get to spend my energy on. But if I'm walking the dog, nothing is happening after I walk the dog. I keep saying to myself every day, "Oh, I'll get that done after I walk Angus." No, you won't. That's the devil talking. No, you won't. You're any work that you think you're doing afterwards. No. So that's my new life since the book came out has been about like, okay, you have the book, and the book came out, and you thought that the book was going to be the thing that took up all of your energy, and then you forgot you had a body. Like you forgot that you were also going to have to take up energy eating and sleeping and walking your dog. So like how are you going to make the book have a life outside of you when you have so much more limited energy to promote the book and to talk about the book and to email libraries to get them to stock the book or whatever. And every day is just like, okay, what is the most important thing you have to do today? And some days it's a shower. Some days that's the most important thing. Sorry, I can't. Whatever I said I was going to do for you, that's not what's happening. So it's really frustrating working with such a limited supply.
Yeah. And rarely is the most important thing writing. And in fact, that's always the first thing to get cut. I'm guilty of being a public school, cutting the arts and focusing on, what I have to do. But so that, I mean, making time to write, or making time to do those hobbies, or making time to shower, to make coffee is the self-care, like Sarah was saying earlier. Just being is selfing, or is caring for the self. And it's hard to like accept that, I guess, sometimes, but also to live that too.
It's so hard to make it into a thing that you live every single day and that you remember. And this is something that I tell myself all the time, and I'd like for our listeners to hear it. You are more than your poems. Okay? You are more than your book. You are more than your poems. I know that they seem like they are the best thing about you. Like, at least for me, that is definitely how it feels. My art is the best thing about me. Make the coffee, like, take your dog for a walk, brush your teeth. Like, no, you matter too, even if you're not writing 20 poems a week or whatever nonsense thing. However you want capitalism to to infect the way that you think about writing, because we all do it. You are so important, and if you need to take a nap, and if you don't get that poem written, it's okay. You're more than your poems.
And like expand what you think writing is too. Like sometimes writing is setting up your writing space, or collecting things for your writing, or eating, or whatever it is, the things that keep you alive in order to write, or to keep writing, or to want to keep writing. It's like developing an enthusiasm for it instead of, well, I have to do it or I'm not a writer type of a mindset. You're
You know,
still a writer when you're not writing.
there was this, I don't know, there's a word for it, but there's this piece of advice I heard um from Ben Miller, quoting actually the founder of the Midwest Writing Center, the co-founder, David R. Collins. He said the best advice he ever got, and now this is like, it was such a revelation to me, like it made me feel a huge burden off, was do one thing every day for your writing, which is not sit down and write every day. It's think about it, which also takes energy, by the way. And then I wanted to add on to that. You said something, Tate. I thought of that. I wanted to throw that in there. You don't, caring for yourself is caring for your craft, but yeah, of course, you're not limited to this definition. It was Liv. Um, there's a woman, and I'm not going to say who because she didn't say it to me in a way that made me feel like I could share it
Mm.
or I could share the details. But she said that she's a someone who suffers from chronic pain, said that someone said to her um that you can't call yourself a poet if you don't write X number of poems a year. And I was like, "Oh, the privilege."
Mm. The stamina. I wish I had that. That's how nice for them. That's all I keep thinking. How nice for you. Yeah, no.
There's something I wanted to get to at the beginning to like one because it came up, but two to sort of shape the conversation. And I think that it would be terrible not to talk about it while we're here. And I will preface this with I look up this phrase and the second word in the phrase weekly. Um, so I'm asking you to give your own definitions. Um, of disability poetics. Poetics is the word I look up. Like every single time I use or hear the word poetics, I look it up. And there's there's the like dictionary definition and then there's the literary term. And those are different. And if I look up the literary term, then I have to look up aesthetics, which also has those two. Um, different pieces. So like no pressure in the definition, but I do want to talk about what disability poetics means to you. And then I will just make you come back and talk about this again because I'm trying to watch the time and be respectful.
Tate, do you have any thoughts you want to jump on that first, maybe?
Um, yeah, that's a tough question. What is disability poetics? And I think in a way that I can un understand it, I think it kind of revolves around like a radical awareness to the body, but also the place or the placement of the body, and to these, f fragments, a sequence of fragments, how, we perceive the world and how we are perceived in it. And I don't know, I just think it's a radical awareness, maybe.
Yeah,
Okay, but
radical
that was
awareness.
beautiful.
Yeah, that's radical awareness is really the heart of it. I think that that's great. Yeah. I would say for me, it is any poetry that is produced out of someone who embraces disability as a political category,
Mm.
not just as an identity category, but as a political stance. Um, there's my poetry was, I've always been disabled. I haven't always been like capital D disabled in the political sense of like it shapes my outlook and it shapes my identity and it shapes my response to various stimuli. I think that was what Tate was getting at with the placement of the body, right? Like it hasn't always shaped my response to the outer world in a way that I was conscious of. And I think disability poetics is about having your body shape your responses consciously to the world that you exist in, and then using that to want to change the world in some way, make it better, make it different.
Hmm. That's so interesting. D Disability as as a political identity. I've been thinking a lot. I mean, who hasn't been thinking a lot about politics and
Mm.
stuff? But like public and private space, and um, Hannah Arendt's amazing definition of like political action is any action taken in a public space. But what is it that makes a space public? What is it that makes a space private? And the two can't exist without the other, right? And it seems that everything we do in private is political. Who you sleep with, how long your showers are, what you eat, what you can afford to eat. Um, and in that same way too, our bodies as vehicles of politics in public and private spaces. I just love that you're bringing in.
I used to do, I still do. I don't know why I said it like that. Um, Storyteller as activism training. And there is when I did it for an organization that is known for a single topic, um, fairly or not. I would always tell people we live in a world in which the body is a political object. There's no way you can move through this world without having a story if you live in a body. And you do. Like you just do live in a body. Um, so yeah, I'm really happy that came up, but I'm also happy at your reflection on it, Tate, about the body in space is going to be an action.
Yeah, and like who is it that owns that space? Who is it that controls who can get in or get out? Who enforces the space? I don't know. There's just so many factors at play constantly.
I
Liv.
find that definition really interesting of politics being something that has to be public. I would really push against that and argue that so much of my politics and my political actions and my activism are things I do privately. I do most of my activism and then just don't tell anybody about it because I'm just like, all right, well, I don't need to post about that on social media or whatever. Or like, I love the examples you used, Tate, of the food that you eat and the showers that you take and who you sleep with and what clothes you buy and I think that especially because we were talking about isolation, right? And disabled isolation, I think, is its own special flavor of isolation. You know, if you're disabled, you are maybe in a lot of cases barred from spaces that you'd like to be in for one reason or another. I think that disability politics is very much about the private space, and is very much about like what spaces we don't have access to, and who we don't have access to, and what kind of relationships we are unable to forge. And yeah, I find that really interesting that person chose to define politics as being purely in a public sphere, because I think I do most of my politicking uh privately and in the boundaries of my own body and my own space. There's very little that I'm doing publicly. And and that has to do obviously with getting older and with getting more disabled as you get older. Like you're never going to catch me at a march. I'm sorry. It's just not. I'm sorry. I can't do it anymore. And I've lost the ability to want to do it. Like that's the thing too. There was a part of me when I was younger who was like, "That's the way that you do activism." I am not at this point. I'm 36, and I'm just not going to do it. I don't have it in my body to do it. And it
It's,
took a
I
long.
think, naive to think that there would only be one way about.
Yeah, we all are contributing, hopefully, in the ways that are we're able to contribute. And that's what I think disability justice is really about, is that is the body's limitations as a way to craft what you're capable of, craft what your actions look like. And then that's also a place for real dreaming. Like if you have limits, in those limits you can kind of be like, well, what am I capable of? Like, what am I capable of, and how can I make this action benefit the people around me?
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. Thank you for talking on that. I agree 100%. And Hannah Arendt's definition, I think, is limiting, and we need to reconcile with who it excludes. Um, but I will say that I think it was kind of revolutionary when she said it in the 50s.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely. You have to
yeah,
take things in their historical context, and you can't use like modern historical context to judge what something that was said or made in the past. You have to kind of judge it like in its own context.
yeah, a cultural translation,
Yeah.
you know. I,
We
I'm
could do this every week. Honestly, we could get together and do this literally every week, and we could make our own podcast, and we would still not run out of things to talk about. I feel this is.
I would
Yeah,
love.
ordinarily I would not pose this uh invitation while recording, but I was wondering if you guys would be up for doing a second part that's disability writing practice.
Oh yeah,
Um, and then Tate, I know I mentioned this before we started recording, that I might read your what you wrote that inspired me. Is that okay?
sure.
Um, I'm not sure if I actually got your permission before and now you're like pressured,
No,
but I could cut this.
yeah, cut that. No, no. It's of course. I'm touched. Thank you.
Um, I had texted Tate that I was hoping to do a follow-up for our talk about haikus, and just because I know a lot in the writing world has changed for Tate since we last spoke. And I like you. Um, and you
Oh,
said that you had been thinking about disability. Now I'm reading about chronic illness and chronic writing practices, about disability as a means, as a way into the extreme present. Those now moments of awareness I want to embody in my writing. Disability as a generative constraint, the body itself as informing the writing, about rigorous dailiness and the value of daily craft labor in an economy that privileges speed and replicability, the ability to replicate, replicability. Okay, rewind. The value of daily craft labor in an economy that privileges speed and replicability and white supremacy, about the disconnect between our abilities to perceive and our responsiveness through the use of varying tools, pen, paper, typewriter, and especially the body. And I think that's just first, like how you send a text message that's that goddamn beautiful is kind of rude, but kind of rude. You don't need to be so good all the time. But also sort of the thing that I think, A, is most resonant for me is in there. And also I think those are the things that I'll say normies don't think about and maybe never have, even though I think a lot of this is universal. Maybe I'm wrong. We tend to normalize our own experience. Um, but that was really like, I was like, first, these two need to meet. Second, I need them to talk about this. So that's where I got most excited. Because I have taken up more time than I promised to. Um, I'm going to skip my updates on on the Writing Center. I'll put some good notes in the description of the video so that you can see what's coming up. And there'll be lots of other good things in that description with websites and links and definitions for stuff that we talked about today, and probably a couple of like my notes because I took so many notes. But I would like folks, if you've got the time, I hope you've got the time, set 5-10 minutes on a timer and do whatever sort of writing is available to you, just on your body, on the feeling of being in a body. However it comes, with whatever tools you have, a journal, a list, a poem, a story, whatever comes is correct. Um, and please, first, thank you guys so much for being here.
This was amazing. Are you kidding me? Thank you for asking us to do this. This was awesome. I never want this conversation to stop. I love it so much.
Listen, I have time. No.
Yeah. Yeah.
And please, as always, write more light into your life.